Well, hello there. How are you? How are you? How are you? What is that? We're going to talk about that today. Past lives, future lives, or I think what you might call simultaneous lives. Often when we're trying to figure out who we were in past lives, it's possible you're getting something from the future. I don't know a lot of people who've actually done that. I think usually what people get, they believe to be past lives, because we're always thinking in linear terms. I just don't think you receive those kind of downloads because you're not looking for them as far as like what your future lives are going to be, right? But I think you could do that. And there's a reason for that. Let's talk about time. If you want to understand past and future lives, we need to understand time, and we also need to understand you. What are those things? Well, first of all, time, that one's real easy. There is no such thing as time. I don't know if you knew that, but now you know. And you know who figured that out? Albert Einstein. None other than the Albert Einstein is the one who figured out that there is no such thing as time at all. And his theory of relativity with regard to whether or not there is time has long since been proven. So there is no such thing as time. Time is a matter of area, of space, right? It's all about relative position, relative speed, where certain things are in relation to other things around them and how those things are moving. So for example, you could be in another solar system somewhere out there in the galaxy, and let's say that that solar system is moving faster. Maybe it's closer to the center of the galaxy. So it moves faster through space. Well, time is going to go faster, slower for you. Time is going to go slower for you in relation to us here on Earth, right? Am I doing that right? Yeah. Yep. Time is going to go slower for you on that other solar system. In relation to us here on Earth, it's going to go faster in relation to you in the other solar system. So you in the other solar system slower than us here on Earth faster. Slower, faster, right? Or if you live on a planet that is orbiting a star, a sun, that's way, way bigger than our sun. And there's some big suns, stars, same thing out there, right? Actually, our star, the sun, is relatively speaking smaller than most other stars. I mean, it's huge compared to the Earth. You can fit, like a couple million Earths into the sun or something like that. But like our sun, if we think of the sun as a little speck like this big, right? Tiny little speck. There's other suns out there in the galaxy and the universe that are like this big compared to our sun being this big, little tiny speck, right? And if you live on a planet that's orbiting that bigger star, time is going to be going slower. Yeah, slower for you, right? More gravity. Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be going slower. Yeah. I always have a hard time remembering how that works because it's kind of counterintuitive, right? Like if you're traveling faster, time slows down. Time slows down. And they've actually like more than proven that in our modern world. So like NASA, for example, when they launch a satellite, they actually have to build something into the computer on board the satellite to keep track of time. Like the clock on board the satellite is programmed to move just a little bit differently, at a little bit differently of a speed, to account for the difference between the clock on the satellite and the clock on the Earth. Because the computer on the Earth and the computer on the satellite have to communicate, and certain things have to happen at certain times depending on what the satellite is being used for. And we want to make sure that the clock on the ground and the clock on the satellite match all the time. But because of the law of relativity, Albert Einstein, the satellite, which is orbiting the Earth, is moving very, very fast, 17,500 miles per hour. That's about 5 miles every 1 second. Every second, boom! The satellite travels 5 miles. That's how fast the satellite is traveling as it orbits the Earth. That's fast. And so you can actually measure the time difference. They actually have to build it in to the software on board the computer. Okay, so that's time. That's time. It's all relative. There's actually no such thing as time. It's a matter of perspective or a matter of place. Now, let's talk about you. What is that? What is you? Well, here on Earth, you think of yourself as a 3-part triune being. Body, mind, soul, right? But when you do the thing that we call die, your body ceases to function and your mind ceases to exist. All that's left is you, the real you, the soul. It's where you came from. It's where you're going to go back to. It's what you really are, right? So, considering that there is no such thing as time, this is the diagram that I came up with one day. And it's interesting too, an interesting story. I came up with this one day. It has to be like this because of the fact that there is no such thing as time. And I want to say it was like a month later or something, I saw another person who did a video where they talked about it, and they drew almost exactly this same thing. And I've seen this in a couple of other places since then also. So I guess it's just kind of obvious that it must work this way. And I think one of the other teachers who I saw talking about this, they said they channeled it or something. Well, me, I just use science to figure this out. It has to be this way because there's no time. So you see in my example here, I've got, okay, this is when you incarnated in a past life in the year 432 AD, the year 1590, 1831, 1952. So you were kicking it with Elvis Presley, perhaps, right? And then this is you now, and this is you a couple hundred years from now, and so on. Now, again, why we cannot download future lives, my guess is going to be we're just not looking for that because we think of time as being linear. But the soul, which exists in the higher dimension, the dimension of the absolute, and it's not really 5D, the soul. It's more like infinity D. It's not a place. It's a state of existence, that dimension that it is in. It's not really a place that it's in. It's what it is. Okay? But to just kind of help you visualize, I still drew this. Well, anyway, we here on Earth, because we live in duality, the mind, body, mind, soul, because we live in duality, positive, negative, light, dark, yin, yang, plus, minus, good, bad, up, down, hot, cold, left, right, here, there, past, future, right? duality. And that's how the mind functions, is duality. Because we live in duality, thought is duality, conceptualization, that's duality, emotion, love, fear, feel good, feel bad, it's all duality. Relativity, as Albert Einstein called it. Because we live in duality, in this 3D reality, we think of existence as taking place in a continuum of time. And it does not. It does not. All of these different times exist now. And that's literally what Albert Einstein proved. So literally 432 AD and 1590 and all these past and future times, they exist right now. It's just a matter of place. It's a matter of perspective. It's a matter of relativity. It's not time that we're moving through to get to these past or future times. It's really place. And you can look around on the internet if you don't really understand how that works, and you can usually find some decent information. You might try reading A Brief History of Time. It's a book by Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, a great physicist, brilliant physicist, world-renowned, brilliant mind. Stephen Hawking. The name of the book, again, is called A Brief History of Time. And there's no math in that book. It's not like a lot of technical stuff. Mr. Hawking actually did a really great job of writing the book in such a way so that the layperson can understand it, right? It's not really technical. He uses like analogies to explain very difficult to grasp concepts about physics. But the fact is, guys, that there is no such thing as time. So that's why all of these incarnations of you exist right now. And so this here, which is your current incarnation, we could say the word now in this context should be perhaps in a set of quotation marks, because technically all of these are happening in the eternal moment of now. That really is how time works. I know that's hard for you to conceptualize, but it's a proven fact in science that there is no such thing as time. So you're really, like, let's say you're here and you're you're picking up on a past life, and let's say it's somebody from the 50s, and you're like, oh wow, that's who I used to be. Well, it's who you really are now. And the way that you're able to pick that energy up is through the higher self. This is, I guess, what you would call your higher self, right? So when you de-incarnate, your consciousness returns to here. And then there's another interesting question. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, maybe in another video some other day, but the consciousness exists both here and here. And again, it's easy to see how that can work when you take out the concept of time. And consciousness itself also is a slippery thing. It seems to have the ability to move around and around and be in all places at the same time. Consciousness can be in all places at the same time. There's a famous experiment called the double slit experiment. If you're interested, there's a channel on YouTube I'm not affiliated with, but there's a video by a gentleman named Arvin Ash. A-R-V-I-N. Arvin Ash is the name of the channel. He did a video about the double slit experiment where they proved that a particle, like an electron, a very small particle, for example, can be in all places at the same time. So it is possible. The laws of physics do allow for that to happen. So consciousness can exist in all these places, including here, at the same time. And I believe that this here isn't really a separate entity itself. It's really, I guess, what you might say is the sum of all of these individual consciousnesses, which is really one consciousness. So is it individual consciousnesses or is it one consciousness? It's both. And if you need help understanding that one, go look up the concept of dichotomy. Dichotomy, write that down. Dichotomy, it's like D-I-C-O, like D-I-C-H-O-T-M-Y or something like that. Dichotomy, where you can have two seemingly diametrically juxtaposed concepts where if one exists, the other one couldn't exist. It would not be possible for them to exist, but they do. And by the way, you get dichotomies in physics all the time, in actual science-based physics, right? So the consciousnesses are individual consciousnesses and one consciousness. And maybe, if any of you know Star Trek, remember Star Trek, The Next Generation, with Picard and Riker and Data and Worf, right? Remember the Borg? Remember the Borg? Right? It's a bunch of individuals that make up one whole. Okay? So when you see a past life, you're picking up on that energy because it is you. It is you. If you see a past life, it is you. It is you. There is no time. That is you right now, if you're picking up on a past life. Now, because we're not expecting to be picking up on future lives, because we are always thinking of time in terms of linear time, that might explain why we don't pick up on future lives, right? Because we're not looking for that. We're not expecting that. We think we have not lived future lives yet. But we have. They're all happening right now. So I think theoretically you should be able to do that. You should be able to do that. But there could be some other reason why maybe you can't. And actually, that could be. This is the which came first, the chicken or the egg question, which when you're dealing with like particle physics or quantum physics or relativity, that concept comes up a lot. Also in spiritualism, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? You're always trying to figure out which thing came first. So it could be that you cannot access future lives through the Akashic record because of the fact that when you're here incarnated, we do experience linear time. But because of our perspective in this 3D reality, I'm guessing that might explain why you can't do that while we're here in this 3D physical reality. It's our perspective, it's our angle of being able to view ultimate reality here in the 3D world. But when you de-incarnate, you're at true reality and you can see all angles. And so, gosh guys, I mean physics and also the idea of past, future, or simultaneous lives, you're always going to run into these paradoxes all the time in spiritualism and science. And it's actually because of the paradoxes that reality is even able to exist. Right? So if you're going, I know, I get this piece of it and I get this piece of it, but the fact that those two things both exist and they offset each other, that's what I can't reconcile. It's a paradox. Right. And it's because of that paradox that there is reality. you might recall the yin-yang symbol. And that's one of the teachings of the yin-yang symbol, right? Two things that are so different. It's a duality. And it could be that those two things are so different that they offset each other. They cancel each other out. It can't be, but they are. That's the kind of things you're dealing with when you get into this kind of stuff. But that is how our reality functions. It's like magic. Isn't that something? I think that's pretty cool too. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I will be back next week for another mind-bending video. Adios.